Kevin Durant is officially on the move. The first domino to fall of this NBA offseason as he heads to the Houston Rockets. The Phoenix Suns may be on a road toward the bottom. How does this affect the Wizards? We'll tell you here on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Network, it's your team every day. Alongside DC sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Washington Wizards, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and I cover all things DC sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Real quick, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Let's get right into it. A lot to get to here in this episode. The Rockets trade for Kevin Durant. How does this affect the Wizards? We'll get into some more reporting that we have seen about the Wizards regarding the upcoming NBA draft, which is, just 2 days away from the time that we release this. The NBA draft is on Wednesday. We will be live for it, so stay tuned for the details of that. And post-NBA Finals Game 7 right here. The Oklahoma City Thunder are officially NBA champions, one of the youngest teams to do it. They get it done. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP of the league, is the Finals MVP. And, man, you got to feel for Tyrese Haliburton and the Indiana Pacers, what happened there at the beginning of that game. But we'll get into that later in the third segment of this show. Right now, Kevin Durant on the move out of the desert. He heads to the Houston Rockets. The Rockets just get KD. The Suns get Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, 2025 first-round pick, which is the number 10 pick in the draft, and then 5 future second-round picks. Abdullah, I just wanted to get your initial impression today when you first saw the news of this trade break.
Just because it was KD, it's so funny how, this trade just didn't feel like it was anything big just because we're so used to KD being on different teams. And not even trying to diss Kevin Durant. It's just, it is what it is at this point of his career. I think 37 years old. Can still put up a good amount of points, but can he lead a team to a championship? I think Houston thinks that. But talking about the trade itself, the fact that the Rockets didn't give up Alperen Sengun, one of the Thompson guy, I keep forgetting. I know they have a men. Jabari Smith Jr. They kept their young core, and they only give up Jalen Green, a guy in Jalen Green who clearly the project was not working. Project Green in Houston. He was a very explosive athlete, but just didn't show up come playoff time. And that was Houston's fault. You can see that was their flaws this past year in the postseason against the Warriors, where you just needed a guy that could step up and take that shot. And Kevin Durant's going to be that guy. And they have to be contenders now because at the end of the day for Houston, it's not like you gave up a lot. You only gave up Jalen Green, who honestly was going to be on the way out anyway because it just didn't work out here and there in Houston. But for the Wizards, that 10th overall pick, I thought that could have been a trade asset to trade up and acquire from 18 to 10, especially if a guy like Derek Queen falls or maybe Common Malawatch. But now that Phoenix has it, I think they're definitely going to stick with their guns. And with Phoenix right now, I think Bradley Beal is going to be out, whether it's bought out or being traded. They owe him a lot of money. And Devin Booker, his future there, I really think he should want out, but I think he's just going to say this because he's so loyal to Phoenix. So that affects the pick swaps that we have next year with Phoenix, because if Phoenix ends up being a bottom 4, bottom 5 team in the league and they get a high lottery pick, as long as our pick is top 8, which I think it will be, we get that pick swap. And again, it all goes back to that Bradley Beal trade, how we got fleeced. But hindsight now, this Phoenix team is blowing up. But the trade itself, it does become a point where we talk about Jordan Poole was a destination for Houston. I thought that could have been a possibility if you were to dealt him, but 10th overall pick, I think it's out of the table when it comes to trading up. I think Phoenix, they need all the young guys they can get because their roster outside of the guard room is just very, very dwindled.
Well, Phoenix has, I think, 5 or 6 shooting guards on the roster right now, which is ridiculous. But, yeah, one important note to clarify about this trade, because a lot of Wizards fans have instantly ran to Twitter and said, well, pick swaps, this could be big if Phoenix bottoms out. Does this allow the opportunity for the Wizards to swap that pick, reserve the right to do it? Now, the Wizards still do have to finish they don't have to finish in the bottom 4, but they have to have a top 8 pick to have that pick protected. And the Wizards cannot exercise its right to pick swap unless they have that top 8 pick and still hold the right to their first-round pick. So losing next year, yeah, kind of important for the Wizards in terms of, one, just having that first-round pick as a possibility, and then if Phoenix does fall off here, leaving the opportunity for the pick swap, the Wizards do have to own a first-round pick in order to make that happen. So that is an important note to clarify there about this whole situation. Just moving on about the trade and how this might affect the Phoenix Suns and why they could bottom out, or why this could help them rebound a little bit. I think acquiring the number 10 overall pick is a very big move here for Phoenix. I think that is very valuable in them in terms of not just having assets, but having the ability to draft a player that will help you maybe retool, recalibrate, or maybe start a rebuild for this Phoenix roster. I think, as you said, Devin Booker probably sticking around there at this point, but the mesh between Booker and now Jalen Green, if he does indeed stay there, the reports are indicating that he probably is staying in Phoenix. I just don't know if it's going to work out well that time.
I heard that they want to trade him. I don't know. I've heard like mixed opinions on it.
I don't think it's going to be easy for them to move him at this point. I think it's going to be hard for them to move Bradley Beal, obviously, because he's on the worst contract in NBA history. And that's not the only reason it's going to be hard to move him, because if you're Phoenix and you think you might be on the downturn here, in your best years are not ahead of you at this point, you probably don't want to try to trade Bradley Beal at this point, because you'd have to trade away a lot of assets in order to get that deal done. Whenever you trade someone with a bad contract, that's what it comes with. That's how the Wizards have gotten these trades done, where they get Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton in the past trade deadline, because they're picking up these bad contracts. So teams will have to throw in some of their assets with it. With this year, of course, the Bucks sending over A.J. Johnson, who could be a really interesting piece for this Wizards team going forward. But it's going to be tough to tell how Phoenix can mesh with the new group of players it has here. And given that a team that had Beal, Booker, and KD could not make the playoffs last year in a stacked Western Conference, I do not expect the Suns to be a playoff team whatsoever. Will they be lottery bound, though? That remains to be seen. I think it's going to depend on what other dominoes fall here throughout the remainder of the offseason.
But I agree. And it's crazy looking back, the fact that they gave up, was it Mikal Bridges, 4 first-round picks, I think other young guys. And it just goes to show, I think that was the last experience of super teams. And I get it. Not a lot of people want to call it a super team because Bradley Beal isn't that great. But at the time, and the whole Brooklyn situation with Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden, it looked scary. But it just goes to show, and after seeing the Thunder winning today, you don't really need a super team to win. You need that number one guy, and you need that number 2 that can step up in the brightest of moments. You need a rim protector. So if you're the Phoenix Suns, their future, I mean, you get that 10th overall pick, which helps, but they're really going to be really thin these next couple of years when it comes to contending. I just don't think it's possible. And if you're Devin Booker, and I'm not saying this just because we want that draft pick. Obviously, I want the draft pick, but when it comes to him as an NBA player at his point of his career, he should want now. I think it's about time. It just doesn't make any sense. And the Suns need to move on from Bradley Beal, and they just need to hit that reset button. And the lack of draft capital they have, they need to get some draft picks.
Yeah, and the only other potential for moving on from Beal if you're Phoenix is a buyout. But if you're Bradley Beal, I don't think a buyout makes sense for him, because he'd be, succumbing a lot of money at that point within the buyout. I think Phoenix still owes him $111 million over the next 2 years. So if you're Bradley Beal, you almost get into that John Wall situation when he was in Houston, where essentially it's not going to be as bad, because if Beal's on the roster, he'll be playing in the games for Phoenix. I'd be pretty sure about that. At one point, Wall was getting paid around $45 million a year to sit on the bench and travel with Houston. I don't think we're going to get into a situation that dire here with Bradley Beal, but it is interesting to think about how, they're kind of at a crossroads here at this point, because Phoenix wants him gone so bad, but there's really nothing they can do because the no trade clause, which continues to look crazier every single day. If you thought the no trade clause was crazy when the Wizards gave it to him 4 years ago, it looks crazier every day that passes. It just keeps on getting worse somehow.
And you know what's funny, Ben? I saw a report saying that he personally thinks, I don't know if it was him himself or someone in the Suns organization, but since KD is gone now, it's going to open up his game and he's going to have a better season this year, which I think is just blasphemous. And I think Bradley Beal, the fall off, it really needs to be studied. At one point of the career, the guy was averaging 30 points per game, second highest points per game in the season behind Steph Curry, and now to where he's at right now, it's just unbelievable. And the fact that Will Dawkins somehow managed to get rid of that contract, just another like round of applause for the man.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. It's been crazy what has happened to Phoenix, especially in terms of after when that trade happened. A lot of Wizards fans were unsure what to think.
But we
about.
warned them, Ben. We told them Bradley Beal is not all as it is, and they didn't listen to us.
A lot of Wizards fans didn't know how to feel after that trade, if the return was going to be worth it, considering there wasn't an official first-round pick in there. But things may be starting to look up a little bit here for Will Dawkins and this Wizards group. All right, so we've talked about a blockbuster NBA trade that maybe has some slight effect on what happens with the Wizards. We're going to give you some more inclination here as to what the Wizards are thinking as we are on a mad dash to Wednesday in the NBA draft. We got some details of some new reports that we've seen from this past weekend. We'll give it to you next here on Locked On Wizards. OLIPOP is a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste of soda but want something that supports their health. With just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can, OLIPOP is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 in an Orange Fanta. OLIPOP flips the script with a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something for your body. My favorite so far, it was definitely the root beer. I drank all of them. I was supposed to sip one here for the read, but I unfortunately ran out of all of them. They were that good. I'm telling you right now, I'm waiting on another shipment to come in here. It just feels really good to crack open an OLIPOP soda and know that you are able to cut down on the sugar, especially if you're like me on a summer cut here. And then you also have something that is good for supporting your gut health as well. So get a free can of OLIPOP. Just buy any 2 cans at the store and they'll reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Welcome back to Locked On Wizards. We are on a mad dash to Wednesday. Finally, it is the week of the NBA draft as the season officially comes to a close for the NBA, with Oklahoma City completing what's one of the more impressive seasons in recent memory in the NBA. SGA, the MVP, wins the Finals MVP as well. It's time to turn the corner and start to focus on a new chapter here, especially for this Washington Wizards franchise, which has 2 first-round picks to work with. And with Wednesday approaching, we got some new intel over the weekend from our guy, Troy Halliburton. He's been plugged into the Wizard scene for years and years. And from what we've seen from his reporting, he says that both Washington and Utah are very, very high on Jeremiah Fears at the moment. Both of them have worked him out multiple times. And from what we saw in one of the reports is that Washington worked out Fears privately at Georgetown University. So do what you will with that information. So it seems like if Ace Bailey is not there, which still remains to be seen with his situation and what ends up happening with him. We also have heard the reports that Washington might be aggressive and try to move up at some point in this draft. But if the Wizards do stick and pick at 6, it seems like Fears might be the guy who Washington maybe assumes will be there at that point, if a guy like Edgecombe and Johnson, of course, is already gone, and Bailey. And that seems like it could be the pick here for Washington.
Yeah, again, I've like these past couple of weeks, me talking about Jeremiah Fears. Obviously, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but if the situation is where you lose out on Bailey, you lose out on Johnson, you lose out on Edgecombe, and Will Dawkins truly has so much confidence in Jeremiah Fears and being that playmaker here in DC that we just haven't had in so long since John Wall. Go with it. Why not? Who cares about my opinion? Will Dawkins is a professional here. So you go with Jeremiah Fears, and if you don't like Jeremiah Fears at 6, I say you have to call up the Brooklyn Nets and say, give me a trade offer, and just gaslight them into thinking that you're taking Jeremiah Fears and trade back and get more draft capital. There's a lot of options here, but I think it would be an A+ draft, Ben, if you somehow land either Bailey or Johnson, whatever. If you land one of those 2, I think A+ draft, and whatever happens after it is what it is. But if you do end up going with Jeremiah Fears, I love to see his development and see how his game translates. And we'll see if he eventually becomes a Wizard and how much of those concerns of his shooting will be affecting his NBA career.
So let's go through the picks one by one here to see if maybe you and I can get an idea. So 1-1, you have Cooper Flag. 2, Dylan Harper goes to San Antonio. Then at 3, Philadelphia. Do they take Ace Bailey despite him canceling the workout? We know that Philadelphia has actually met with him at the NBA Draft Combine in Chicago. We know they visited him when he was in school, got to see him play. So it's not a guarantee that Philadelphia wouldn't just take Ace Bailey at 3. But let's play devil's advocate right here and say Philly goes VJ Edgecombe at 3. And then Charlotte decides to take Trey Johnson. Then at 5 and 6, you have Utah and Washington. And then the choices essentially right there are either between Ace Bailey, Jeremiah Fears, and then also Con Knipple, who has definitely worked his way into potentially being in the top 5 conversation for draft prospects right here. And it's going to be interesting to see, because if the Wizards and Jazz are both really high on Fears, would the Wizards have to try to make a move to trade up and get Fears? But at that point, if Bailey's still there, maybe you're making the move to trade up and get Bailey. Because I think, my thinking is the ceiling with the prospect that could be in Ace Bailey is too talented to pass up on. So if you're the Wizards and you absolutely love Ace Bailey, trade up and get him. But if he does fall into your lap, absolutely take him as well. I would definitely, I'm not going to question. I wouldn't whine and complain at what the front office does. But if the Wizards passed on Ace Bailey to take Jeremiah Fears, I would definitely be disappointed more than angry.
Yeah, that would be something. That's like Will Dawkins saying that I'm the man of the house, and I think the speculation about Ace Bailey is true. A lot of fans are definitely going to turn their heads when they see that and definitely look back on it, especially if Ace Bailey becomes an all-star. But I saw a possibility or a mock trade, Ben. I don't know if you saw where the Wizards trade up with the Spurs and they will give up Bilal Coulibaly, Tristan Vucevic, and number 6. And for me, I do not think it's worth that at all. I get a Dylan Harper, special guy. I think he's going to be a really good guard in this league. But at the end of the day, I think Bilal Coulibaly is so much potential to be that guy that can be an offensive threat. Defensively, he's already there. So giving up Bilal would be a little too much.
Yeah, I would not give up Bilal Coulibaly at this point. I think we haven't been able to see what his true potential is as an offensive player, and he has developed into being one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire National Basketball Association at this point. So I'm not ready to deal Bilal Coulibaly. I think a lot of that is just, people making up scenarios for what could happen. I think the Wizards wouldn't have any plans. This is a guy that Will Dawkins drafted just 2 years ago. This is his first pick. So there's no way they would be willing to give up on him right now unless for whatever reason they had some sort of idea that they had to give up on him or they had to get a guy like Dylan Harper at this point. I think what we've seen also in the reporting is that Corey Kispert likely to be dealt at some point soon by this Wizard franchise, whether that comes on draft night, because right now what we're hearing is that the Wizards are going to be really aggressive trying to move up from 18. There have definitely been talks that the team is interested in moving up to take a guy like Derek Queen or Kaman Malawach. One of those two players, if the board does fall the way that the Wizards are hoping, we should expect to see some aggression, and Corey Kispert could definitely be part of that.
And also that second round pick that you have, I really 99% sure that second round pick is not going to be used. Most likely scenario that could go down is you package 18, Corey Kispert, and that second round pick to move up. Whether if you think Derek Queen is your guy, trade up for him. Malawach, Nikhil Clifford out of Colorado State's a good guy that I like. The guy at BYU, the 6'9", was it Domingo Moore? I'm forgetting how to pronounce his name. A lot of options there after that 6th pick, so we'll just have to see. The idea of still trading Jordan Poole, it's still out there. I think it's a little less just because of this whole Houston Rockets situation, because I thought that was a destination for him, but we'll just have to see come draft night. I mean, Will Dawkins will just pull something out of his sleeve like last year.
I'm just getting hyped up thinking about it right now because we're finally here. For months and months, it's been now almost 6 weeks since the Wizards got hosed by the lottery again. So I think we've had enough time to finally get over it. And the more and more I think about it with how we've heard the Wizards are expected to be aggressive at some point in this draft, and maybe the way things are falling with potential of Ace Bailey being there at 6, I'm not as salty about it. as I was on the first night. I think the first day after the lottery, I was a salty, salty boy. I could not believe it. Actually, I could totally believe it. I knew it was going to happen. I called it, but I was still so pissed off about it. I've had time to get over it, and now I've had the time to process everything, really think about it, watch a little bit of tape, and I think the Wizards are going to get some very talented players in this draft, despite not getting the number one pick that we had hoped for through a 64-loss season, mind you that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I was really upset. It took me a couple weeks actually to get over, or at least process it. But if you somehow land either Johnson or Bailey at 6, it's a W draft. And again, like you, I'll be less salty.
All right, one final segment to go here in Monday edition of Locked On Wizards. The NBA Finals just wrapped up. The Thunder are the champions of 2025. We're going to recap a little bit of what we saw in the NBA Finals and how this relates to the Wizards. We have that next here on Locked On Wizards. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's super easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I'm able to budget a lot smarter, and I've saved a lot more since I got out of college. Instead of juggling multiple apps, I've been able to use Monarch to check my finances and track spending and even plan some long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and the code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Final segment of Locked On Wizards here on Monday. I'm Ben Strober alongside my co-host Abdullah Ayubi, and we're getting real excited just thinking about Wednesday. We plan on going live for the NBA draft. You'll be able to check that out here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We'll also have the reaction podcast that will come out the next morning. Of course, 2 talented players hopefully heading to our nation's capital. And shout out to Will Dawkins. I know he was so instrumental in what has happened to the Oklahoma City Thunder and that organization over the past couple of years before he was here in D.C. And wow, the Thunder get it done and cap off one of the best seasons in recent NBA history. Regular season dominance, 68 wins. The MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they acquire in the Paul George trade, which, seemed like a big W for the Clippers way back when, and now it has just turned into the most lopsided trade really ever in favor of the Thunder, and they now have the NBA title to brag, with the winnings of this trade. The Thunder have won their first championship in franchise history. My first thoughts as a guy that grew up in the 2010s, Abdullah, I never expected the Thunder to be winning its first championship with someone other than Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook there, but maybe Shai is going to be the guy that starts a dynasty in Oklahoma City that was meant to be in the 2010s, because that team is the youngest team in the NBA. So many young dudes on the floor at all times. I mean, that could be a perennial contender to win the finals year in, year out for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and they have so much draft capital as well on top of that, Ben. So many young guys. I think the youngest team to win a finals, I'm pretty sure, average age is like 25, 26, which is absurd. And that model that they're emulating in Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure Will Dawkins is going to have that here in D.C., I'm hoping. But shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm still a Jokic guy. I still think Jokic deserved MVP, but I mean, SGA is just on a whole different level. He's just as his 3-level scoring ability is being able to be a leader. Lou Dort, amazing defender. Chet Holmgren, 5 blocks, most in Game 7 Finals history, insane. Jalen Williams is a stud, number 2, and it's just complete dominance. It's amazing. Shout out to the Pacers for at least pushing it to 7. And I do want to say, Ben, if Tyrese Halliburton, prayers out to him, if he doesn't get hurt, I think this game is much closer than it was. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. The better team won, and Oklahoma City Thunder, this is the beginning of a dynasty, and it's a good thing they're in the Western Conference. But eventually, when this Wizards team wants to contend and make it to the finals, this team is going to be one of those teams that they have to face.
I think we've seen a clear model built by the Thunder and how a rebuild really needs to work, because the Thunder have orchestrated one of the most successful rebuilds, recalibrations, whatever you want to call it, in recent memory for the NBA. And really, after everyone departs from Oklahoma City, that core group with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook is out the door. As a Thunder fan, you lose your superstar players, and it's tough to see a future without those guys. And I think as Wizards fans, we found it tough to see a future without John Wall and Bradley Beal running the show. But it goes to show you, with a little bit of patience and a savvy general manager, somebody that knows how to push all the right buttons, get you young assets on your team, amass tons of draft capital for the future, and build a team that plays great defense, first of all. I mean, I just want to give so much credit to Oklahoma City because
I think Indiana had like 20, sorry to cut you off, Ben, but 23 turnovers. That is insane in a Game 7.
So even though Halliburton gets hurt in this game, and that was very impactful considering it happened 7 minutes in and Halliburton was on a heater before he probably ruptured his Achilles, which was it was gut-wrenching. I wanted to throw up in my mouth when I saw it. But Oklahoma City absolutely deserved to win that game. They played such phenomenal defense, and Lou Dort was just insane. He didn't have the best series scoring the basketball at all, but his defense was so unbelievable. You can't replicate the impact that he had on the floor because of how good he was defensively and how good the team was defensively. The swarms, the double teams, the team defense overall, coupled with the individual efforts, was so good. And that's the kind of basketball that I need to see from the Wizards going forward. We know that we have some pieces that maybe become these kind of defenders here in the National Basketball Association. Will the Wizards be able to find its superstar, its alien, if you will? We need somebody like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, somebody that just gets you buckets.
Bub Carrington, Ben.
That's Bub Carrington, but I think Ace Bailey has the potential to become that kind of player, and that's why I'm just really hoping that he's there. But Trey Johnson, hey man, that would be cool too. But Abdullah, I just wanted to get your final thoughts on what you noticed from this NBA Finals. This was one of the more memorable finals in a long time for me. The first one to go 7 games since 2016. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a great year for the NBA.
Yeah, the whole Indiana playoff run was amazing. The Tyrese Halliburton game voted the most overrated player, and then back-to-back game winners in series. And I don't know if they win today if Tyrese Halliburton is healthy, but man, it would have been so nice. And at the end of the day, the Pacers, I was rooting for them just because of the fact that I love the underdog. I always root for the underdog. And Oklahoma City, they're always going to be back in the finals and competing because they're just so young and they're so much talent. But for this Pacers team, and that's crazy because next year, the East, I mean, Jason Tatum's going to be dealing with that injury coming back from it. Now, Tyrese Halliburton. Right now, the Knicks, I think, the window is kind of it's open for them, obviously. But right now, the opportunity is there for itself. And I think they're going to be the team that comes, I mean, not out of the East, but they're definitely going to be back in the Eastern Conference Finals. But this goes to show eventually when this Wizards team starts winning, the East is going to open up because the West is just it's as strong as it is. You know, KD to the Rockets. I mean, they're going to be contending, hopefully, at least what they're expecting. But I love the final series. Went to 7 games last year. It wasn't that competitive. We kind of knew that Boston was just too much for Dallas. There's only so much Luka Doncic could have done. But great final series, great playoffs, and I can't wait. It's going to be an exciting year next year. I get it. The Wizards are, I'm 99% sure they're not going to make the playoffs, but there's going to be off strides that eventually we're going to pick up and become a team that's going to be competing in the playoffs.
You and I and everyone that's listening, we know the feeling. We want to be back there. We want to be on our couches yelling and screaming for playoff basketball again. Feel like a child because it's been that long since we've been competitive. I was in 8th grade the year that we were a game away from the Eastern Conference Finals. So that puts into perspective how young I am for, I guess, those in our audience who maybe only hear the audio version, can't see my face that I clearly look like I'm fresh out of high school. I am 21, actually. But, we're yearning to see some winning Wizards basketball, and we're hoping that the start of a next chapter begins for this Wizards organization on Wednesday. We've got one episode to go before the 2025 NBA Draft. Let's get it, folks. We want to thank everyone who tuned in with us and making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the 2025 Locked On NBA Mock Draft a 5-episode series of the most comprehensive NBA draft analysis from NBA experts to college experts and NBA draft experts. Find the 2025 Locked On NBA Mock Draft on the NBA Big Board and Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow with the next edition of Locked On Wizards. Let's stay locked in, everybody. For my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober. We sign off. Go Wizards.